Hi guys and welcome back. So this video this week is going to be on the Mitsubishi Evo 9 engine build. So primarily this is what we were known from back in the day. This is where we started, Mitsubishi Evos. So what I want to do over time is actually introduce some videos showing certain services we offer. We had an Evo service recently and I want to get out a couple of engine builds so you can see how we do it, see what's involved and the processes we go through. So what I was going to say was I'm just going to show you around the car park at the minute, because particularly this video we're doing is on an Evo 9, but it just so happens we've got some nice Evo 7 to 9s in the car park at the moment, all pretty special models. We've got an Evo 8 MR, Evo 8 MR FQ340. That is an Evo 8 RS, although it's got an Evo 9 front bumper on it. It is actually an Evo 8 RS, which is pretty rare. Evo 9 FQ360 MR HKS, again very rare. FQ300 Evo 7. This one's got a little bit of crash damage. That was an Evo 8 RS, and then we've got the Evo 7 RS. That one's currently awaiting an engine build. Actually, that's our car from the track day. You may have seen engine failure on that one, but yeah, so this video is going to be primarily on Evo 9 engine build. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you into the engine room in a minute, but Josh has already started the engine build. So the engine didn't fail. It's not like a car that's had an engine failure and it's in for a rebuild because of that reason. It's purely because the customer's gone for a turbo upgrade, so hybrid turbo, and as we know, you can't push these 4G63 engines further than sort of 400 horsepower safely. So this turbo is expected to make, well, it can make 450 horsepower and maybe a little bit more with the right supporting mods, but what we're aiming for this car is probably about 420, because we're not going to be doing the camshafts. We're going to keep standard head and we're basically going to strengthen the bottom end so we can put a bit more boost through it and we can run this hybrid turbo safely. So I'm going to hand you over to Josh in the engine room and you can see how we build these engines.
Hi guys, yeah, so as Chris just mentioned in the intro, we're building an Evo 9 engine. We're in the engine room right now. So in front of us is basically what an Evo 9 engine looks like in a exploded view. Up until now it's already been stripped down, so it come in as a completely stock engine. It's never been opened. Been cleaning parts, checking parts out, making sure things are okay. This is quite a basic rebuild, so it's only having forged pistons and forged rods. We've got half a mil oversize on the pistons. And then the rest of it will just be basically like clean up, double, triple check and replace what's necessary as you go along. So we'll be having like new seals, etc. ARP hardware throughout. That's pretty much it in terms of what components it's going to be having. The cylinder head's going to be pretty much completely stock, not being touched. I think the power goal on this will be around about 450, maybe a little bit upwards. That'll be all done with a Evo 9 hybrid turbo and some fuel injectors and some of the supporting mods which we can go through when it comes to putting the engine back in the car. But yeah, just to go through a few things. So yeah, these are the forged pistons, they're all laid out. So to the left hand side I've got the H-beam rods, and along the bench we've got basically half cleaned internals and half not. That's only because I ran out of time the other day cleaning some of the components, etc. Everything for the bottom end is clean, ready to go. So when it comes to putting the cylinder back on, I'll just be cleaning the other stuff as I install it and go along and replacing what I need to. So yeah, as you can see, it's all completely apart right now. The block, the crank, the head, what else? And the new pistons have all been to the machine shop. The block has been machined to accept the new pistons because we've gone half a mil oversize. Also to have the deck faced and everything else to be checked out. Same with the cylinder head, that's been pressure checked, surfaced, everything basically checked out to make sure it's all okay. And the same with the crank as well. So at the moment I am going through everything, and the most crucial part of the stage of the engine is basically making sure everything is clean and then measuring everything as you go along. So to begin with, I start off with checking out everything on the block side to make sure everything's in tolerance and just a bit of a sanity check to make sure the machine work's being carried out correctly, make sure you know your piston to ball clearance is what you want it to be, and then go from there. So that's what I've started to do. Just an example, one of the tools we're using is this dial bore gauge here. So using a micrometer, I will measure the size of the piston to the actual size, not to what the box size says it is. So like on the box, these will be 85.5, but they won't be exactly 85.5. So I'll take that measurement and then set my dial bore gauge to that micrometer and then check for cylinder bores. But that's just one stage. I could rattle on through the rest, but we'd be here all day. But that's just to give you an idea. Yeah, so we're back in the engine room now. It's been about a day since we last spoke. So just giving a little bit of an update on what's been happening. So just to rattle on into it, the crank's now in once and for all. All the measurements have been carried out. The final check on that was to plaster gauge it and make sure that's all within tolerance, which it is. So that's now in the block with ARP main studs, which have all been greased up and torqued down per ARP specifications. So you can see now it has got assembly lube in it, so it's not dry. So it does turn over quite nice. So the next port of call is basically, so after measuring the bores, to sit there and work out what sort of ring end gaps I want to be running. Once you figure that out and you put your rings into a set height into the block and basically use feeler gauges to measure the ring end gaps. After that, basically using that tool just there, you'll be filing the rings down to get the desired clearance that you want. It's a very long process. Sometimes you're quite lucky and don't have to do too much, or sometimes you have to take a lot of material off. In this case, the second rings were pretty much already there, just a tiny little clean up. The top rings needed a lot of work. Everything's all laid out, ready to go. I've just literally finished grinding the top rings, so now I've just got to do a little bit on the second, as I just mentioned. Once that's done, I'll dry fit the pistons and the rods together and bolt them up to the crank without no rings in to plaster gauge the big end clearances. If they're all okay, then I can pull them back out, assemble the pistons with all the rings and put them in once and for all. At the moment I'm concentrating on building up the oil pump, etc. So we've got new gaskets, torque sheets, torque specs, etc. to look at. So at the moment I'm just carrying out a balance shaft delete on this one. So what a balance shaft delete is basically normally on the back of the front case, I'm going to call it. You normally have two great big shafts sticking out when it's not needed on this build. So deleting them, putting a little stub shaft in the oil pump, it's generally a Mitsubishi item. And once I've finished mucking around getting this all built up, then I'll stick it on the front of the engine and start building up from there. So yeah, just to quickly show you, after talking about the rings, etc., I thought it would be easier to explain it a little bit more, but also show it in the block itself. So in number one, I've got a top ring fitted at a set height, and then in number four, I've got a second ring in the same sort of set height. Basically, all that means is that every time you're checking your tolerances, you just want to make sure that the ring is in the same place each time, because you could get inconsistencies. Also, you don't want the ring to be like uneven or sort of distorted in the bore. So a little trick is to sort of put it into the bore with your fingers just ever so slightly, and then use some sort of tool to evenly push it down into the bore at a set height. So that's what's been done here and here. As I mentioned in the last clip, that the top rings have already been clearanced now. So in my hand I have got a little feeler gauge, so all you do is you just run this little feeler gauge in between the little gap there, and you just check it. So I've took about 10-15 minutes per ring, because these were really tight to begin with. Once I finish the second rings, then it's assembly time basically. Okay, yeah, just a little update for you guys. A couple of days later, so engine block, since you last seen it, the block's been painted. Last time we would have spoke, stuff would have been getting cleaned up. I think I was grinding piston rings, etc. Fast forward a little bit, all that's now complete. The rods and pistons are built up, rods and pistons are in the block. If it turns over nice, all the tolerances have been set and all the clearances have been checked, and we're all happy there. Yeah, so for my last little snippet you just see, got most of the front built up now. So all like the balance shaft delete, oil filter housing, front case, oil pump, etc, etc, just starting to build up. Next step will be putting the head on. So that's what I'm going to do next. I've just taken the centre bit out, given it a good look over to make sure everything's okay. This has come back from the machine shop as well, so this has been cleaned, checked, make sure there's no cracks, like internal, make sure there's no leaks, make sure the valves are fine, the valve seats are done. So this is all still on standard valves and springs, it's just been refreshed, new stem seals and valves relapped back into the seats. So yeah, I'm going to go stick this onto the block. So the next step will be putting the head studs in, because it's going to have ARP studs now. Get the studs, washers and nuts on, torque it all down, start building up all the headwork. Yeah, that stuff like lifters, cams, getting it all torqued down, time it up with a cam belt, and then from there it's just basically build it all back up. Okay. Yeah, so right, we're back following week. Little update. So I think the last little snippet we saw was the cylinder head going on. Since then, it's now been torqued up. Studs have gone in. ARP 2000s. Torqued in sequence in 3 stages. So yeah, all the head stuff is being reused, been cleaned, cleaned and blown out, and made sure everything's all okay. You know, checking clearances yet again, making sure everything's all in spec. So it's had a new set of lifters. Cam's been cleaned. They've gone back in. Head's been cleaned. All torqued down. Front end's been built up a bit more. Can't remember exactly where I left off in the last video, but it's got these little plates on. This gear here for the exhaust side. The next step will be cleaning out the variable cam gear for the intake side. So this being an Evo 9 engine and having MyVec, that's the difference between this engine and the other variations you'll find on the older models. So yeah, I just need to make sure that's all clean. Put that back on, put the variable cam pulley back on, and then time it all up, and then I can build the whole engine back up with all the auxiliaries, etc., and go from there. After that, it's no longer like the engine assembly will be done basically. It would just be a case of literally putting a sump on, and that's about it. Yeah, so hi guys. Yep, another little update on the Evo 9 engine build. So just a little bit has gone on. So basically, looking at it now, it looks a little bit more complete. It just needs the rocker cover putting on, and then that'll seal the whole thing up. Sumps on now, all sealed up, oil pumps primed, oil filters on, that's been primed, it's all timed up. Variable cam Thomas sprocket's been taken apart, cleaned, checked and put back together. All the like pickups on the back of the cams, so this being an Evo 9 with MyVec, it's got an extra cam sensor for the variable valve timing, or MyVec. So that's all been put back together, timed up, checked, etc. Coolant pipes and oil pipes in the back of the block. So this is all for the MyVec, this oil feed here, and this coolant line here from the back of the water pump. That's all just been put back on. And that's about it so far.
Right.
So coolant pipes, oil feed for the MyVec's back on. What else have I got on? The rear, like, how do I explain it? Rear main seal, like, aluminium case, that's now back on. I'll put the actual rubber seal in when the engine comes off the stand because it's easier. All it is now is just a case of building up all the auxiliaries. At some point I'll put the cam cover on just to seal it up. Probably do that quite soon. And then the rest of it is literally just building up. Like if you look at this box, we've got like alternator bracket, aircon bracket, tensioners and brackets, and wire and loom. So not far off now. Once that starts going on, it will all of a sudden look like how it should do. Exhaust manifold and all that stuff over there needs to be fitted, and then that inlet I need to go through and clean because this actually had failed from a turbo failure, so I need to make sure there's no foreign material inside the inlet manifold and just go through that with a fine tooth comb, and then once that's done I can get put back on and the engine's ready to go. Right, welcome back guys. Yeah, so the last time you would have seen anything on this particular car would have been me in the engine room with either new enough, just a bare long block, built up with nothing attached to it, but the main structure had been put back together, so cylinder head on to the block. I can't remember whether it was timed up or not, but cutting a long story short, we have moved on quite a bit from there. So the engine was built back up, everything checked out absolutely fine. Also had new seals, and one of our manifolds put on a Evo 9 hybrid for Owen Developments offers. a set of ID 1050 injectors. What else did it have? Oh yes, it had an ACT clutch and flywheel, and that's about it really. So all there was from there was building the engine up, getting it mated with a gearbox, with a clutch and everything else on at the same time, and then putting it into a position to put back in the car. So in the engine bay we've got here basically a fully assembled car, so there isn't much to talk about in terms of the engine build here, apart from the fact that it was literally a case of putting the engine back into the car, crossing a few T's and dotting a few I's. First startup can always be a little bit of tension, yeah, because I think anyone who ever builds an engine, it's always nervous for that first start. So yeah, but as soon as it started, I was happy. Everything was fine. Checked everything out, no leaks, bled coolant, etc. Configured a base map so it can run on the larger injectors. And yeah, from there it's a case of running up to temperature, get it through a couple of heat cycles, take on a road test, bring it back, check things over. If everything's okay, then you can begin basically running the engine in. So we run our engines in for a couple of 100 miles, so we'll road test it quite locally. Basically just get a couple 100 miles under its belt under different conditions. Like no boost, a little bit of boost, you're not going flat out in it. We don't take them above 4K. Just put it under a load of different scenarios really, lots of different loads. So it's in today because I've changed oil out now, so it's now no longer got running in oil in it, it's now got our forged engine oil in. Basically treat it like a little service. At the same time I just put a few braces back on that it has underneath. Carried out a smoke test because also the next step for this car is to go to the dyno and get tuned. I did find a small boost leak coming from a J-pipe, so I've sorted that out. The HK intercooler, which wasn't part of the build, this is part of the car, if that makes sense. This is quite a big HK intercooler kit, so it consists of core with pipe work. Yeah, it's quite nice actually, you can see it all along here, etc. Yeah, it just kind of looks a little bit like period correct, shall we say. So yeah, so now it's all ready to go. I'll quickly road test it one more time just to make sure I'm happy with it. Then it's just going to be a case of buttoning it up, sending it to the dyno, and hopefully it should make some good power. Right, so yeah, the last clip you would have seen would have been me finalising the car ready for the dyno. The oil change would have been carried out, etc. It's been checked over to make sure everything was good. So since then the car's been to the dyno. It came back yesterday, so this is how it is now. Made good power, didn't push it too hard, if it makes sense. It made 433 brake horsepower, I want to say, so that's to the crank. 400 foot-pounds of torque, about 1.7 bar boost. So yeah, done really well, goes really well as well, really quite fast falling and keeps the power band quite far out, so about 7 grand. If a customer want to do a little bit more on it in the future, then the next steps would probably be a set of cams, something like a set of 272s and a bit better flow and exhaust. But as it is as a package, it would be really good for like a road car, be fast and quick, really responsive basically, really good setup. So we're now all finished with it, I've road tested it, I've checked it over, made sure everything's still happy days, do you know what I mean? So it would now just be cleaned and ready for the customer to pick up and go and enjoy.